been a recent shift in how high-ranking U.S. officials talk about COVID-19's origins.
The evolution of the virus in bats and what's out there now is very, very strongly leaning towards this could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated. You need to keep looking for the link, and you need to keep looking for evidence that it's something else, like a lab leak.
The findings suggest that the laboratory incident hypothesis is extremely unlikely.
All hypotheses are on the table and warrant complete and further studies.
But now, a new surge of interest surrounds the Wuhan lab leak theory.
For a while, anybody who talked about the lab leak hypothesis, they were dismissed as conspiracy theorists.
The Wuhan Institute of Virology, which studies bat coronaviruses, is located about 2 miles from the animal market that China first pinpointed as the source for COVID-19. But China has denied a connection between the outbreak and the lab.
Initially, what they said was that all of these cases were found in this animal market in Wuhan, and that a lot of the people who worked at the stands there were infected. One piece of evidence that we have is that none of the animal samples at this market where this virus originated from had the same genetic material as COVID-19.
We have real evidence from folks that were on the ground. When you match that up with all of the propaganda around it, it really points to a lab leak.
Since the start, the U.S. intelligence community has looked into 2 theories. One being the human contact with an infected animal, and the other, a laboratory accident.
China was doing a lot to silence whistleblowers, was doing a lot to cover up data.
There's new research, new reports out that researchers at the Institute were actually sickened in November 2019.
This shows that the US does not care about facts or truth and has zero interest in a serious science-based study of origin.
The WHO did come out with a report in March that said that the evidence that they had in front of them, which admittedly from WHO, was not a ton from China. They couldn't get their hands on the labs, on the data. They came out and said that with the data they had in front of them, the lab leak was not likely.
The questions resurfacing about the Wuhan lab and COVID-19's origins have also put a spotlight on the political relationship between the US and China.
There are all sorts of reasons why China hawks on Capitol Hill or inside the administration or outside the administration would want to sort of place the blame, I guess you can call it, on China. They did cover up a lot of the information we needed at the beginning of the pandemic to stop this virus from proliferating.
An international investigation led by the World Health Organization is something that we've actually been pressing for several months in coordination with a range of partners around the world. We need that data. We need that information from the Chinese government.
The administration has been treading very lightly on this COVID issue so far until they understand what is going to be the strategy with Beijing going forward. Our relationship with China has been strained for a long time, and that relationship sort of deteriorated even more so under President Trump. There are a lot of factors that go into developing a diplomatic relationship with China. It's not just COVID. There are trade issues at stake. There are economic issues at stake. There are IP issues at stake.
After the latest news was released in mid-May, Biden called on the U.S. intelligence community to redouble its efforts in investigating the origins of the pandemic and to report back to him in 90 days. There are ways in which the Biden administration can use diplomatic tools to put pressure on China to release some of this data. But given China's secrecy about COVID's origins, there is always the chance that hard evidence will never be found.
The COVID situation is so politically charged that we have to be very careful how we deal with it. Not only because we need to work with China in a future pandemic, but because it will impact some of these other conversations. Now that we're coming out of the vaccination era, things are starting to return back to normal again. I think these foreign policy issues are going to be front and center.
I don't know that we're going to find out with certainty that this came out of a lab. I think we're going to ultimately come up with an assessment and a probability.
I think it's really still up in the air.